Hello folks, in this video we're going to take one of the Lab 2 view controllers, the weather settings view controller, and turn it into a scroll view. So let's run this app. When we do, we see we can tap in here. The view doesn't scroll in any way, and indeed if we turn it sideways the button is unreachable and either underlaps or is shown off the screen somewhere. So, how do we fix this? Well, we have a slide in the pre-workshop video this week that talks about how to do this. At the moment, we have a number of subviews that are part of a top-level view controller. And to fix this, we need to place a content view and a scroll view between these sets of views. And then we have to set up some constraints. So first off, let's set up the views. So to do this, I'm going to select each of the UI elements. So a few labels, a text field, a button, a couple of segmented controls, and this color view. I've got all of them. If I select the safe area or the constraints, then I won't be able to embed it. You can see these options are grayed out. So I'm going to make sure I just have the UI elements. When I do this, I can choose to embed them in a view, so we'll do that. So we now have a view that contains each of these. I'm going to click on this and click again and label it as content view, just because then when I apply constraints, it's going to be more easily recognizable. I'm going to select this content view and I'm going to say embed in a scroll view. So now we have our top level view, it contains a scroll view, and it contains a content view, and the content view contains all my elements I have on the screen. So pretty much what we describe here. Now let's set up some constraints. We can see the scroll view should be constrained to the edges of the top level view, and our content view should be constrained to the edges of the super view. And this one might seem weird, but this is sort of a magic set of constraints that, because it's a scroll view, it makes everything work for us magically. So I'm going to select the scroll view, and I'm going to constrain it to the super view. And to do this, I'm just going to put 0 in each of all of these values, make sure constrain to margins is off. So we'll do that. I'm now going to select the content view and do the same thing, constrain it to its super view and leave the margins off. So we'll do 0, we'll do 0, we'll do 0, and we'll do 0. So we'll set that up. The next thing I need to do is I need to constrain each of my UI elements to the content view. So let's do that. I'm going to select this description here, and I'm going to I am going to select constrain to margins here because I want these objects to obey the margins. If I don't do this, they might underlap things like the dynamic island. So I'm going to these all seem to be 12, so let's just leave them as 12. I'll just turn them on these 3 sides, and we'll click add. That's interesting. We'll debug that in a moment if it turns out to be a problem. I'm going to select all these other elements, and I'm going to do the same thing where I constrain them by 12 points to the margins. Okay, that looks good, or mostly good. And with the button, I'm going to constrain it to the bottom of the screen. I think we were doing 12 for all of these. And then, because it's a scroll view, I need to make sure it has a height. At the moment, all these views have fixed height and are constrained to the top, and this view has a fixed height, the button, and it's constrained to the bottom. But there's nothing in between, so I'm going to add one constraint to constrain this colored view to the button, just so the view now has a fixed height, and that will determine the sort of scroll that our scroll view is operating on. Okay, so this looks like there might be some issues with the constraints, but that's okay, we can debug it. Yeah, so all right, it doesn't scroll and some things are badly positioned. So let's fix this up. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at my description label and see what it's constrained to here. So it's got trailing space to the super view and a leading space to the super view. So this is the left and the right constraint. Oh, and actually, one of the things that I may not have done here is I also need a constraint that says that the content view size is constrained to the top level view size. And if it's a vertical scroll, which it is, we constrain the content view to have the same width as the top level view. So let's do that. The content view, and I'll select the top level view by holding down Command here. And I can select these two things to have equal widths. So when I do that, that's nice. It's now adjusted the scroll content view width to be the same as the top level view, and as a result, it turns out my constraints with a lot of these items are probably correct. Because if we now see, for example, the constraints on this, they've got a trailing space of the super view of 12, a leading space of 12, and spaces between the item above and below. So that all looks good. Let's have a look at the one at the very top, my description, and see if it's okay. So here we have a trailing space to the super view, which is the content views, trailing margin, and 12. So that looks okay too. We can see it in here. The only problem is it's kind of underlapping everything. So that looks okay. Probably something is still wrong with our scroll view. Let's run it and have a look. Yeah, so it's not scrolling. If I turn it sideways, it isn't updating properly. So let's fix this up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top level view, and I'm going to have a look at the constraints that apply at this level and just check what we've got here. Okay, so we have a constraint that says the right hand side of the scroll view is equal to the super view with 0 constant. So that's fine. We've got something that's a vertical constraint saying the top of the super view is equal to the top of the scroll view with 0 constant. So that's good. We've got the same thing on the bottom, super view, scroll view, 0. With the right hand or left hand side, we've got scroll view leading side is equal to super view with 0. And we've got one constraint that says the view width here is equal to the content view width. So they all look good. I'm going to have a look at the next level, which is the ones applying to the scroll view. So this is weird. We know that for the scroll view, or the content view, should have constraints that are equal to the edges of the scroll view with 0 offset. So that's what I'm expecting to see here. Instead, I see something that says the content view is equal to the frame layout guide. That is not correct. This should be to the super view. So let's change it. When we change it, it's also put an offset in here. So I'm going to change the offset and just set it to 0. Okay, so that's the bottom. Let's have a look at the trailing one. The trailing one says it's the content view to the super view with 0. That's fine. Let's have a look at the leading side. This is content view to frame layout guide. So again, shouldn't be the frame layout guide, should be the super view. So content guide to the super view, 0, all good. This one to the top is content view, and again it says frame layout guide. So we only want our content view to be constrained to the super view. So we select super view, we've got an offset of 0. This all looks good, and in fact our content has just jumped, and we can see it's now positioned right. It's even got this line that shows the bounds of the scroll view, And in fact, if we scroll on here, it actually even scrolls on the storyboard. So that scroll view looks like it's working. So I think now we can run it here and give it a go. So here I have a scroll view hopefully, and hooray, yes, I can tap and drag on it. We can see it sort of bounce. If I turn it sideways, here's my scroll view. I can scroll up or I can scroll down. We also see that it adjusts for the margins for the dynamic island. So it looks like I now have all of my constraints set up properly. Yeah, so here you saw how I set up the scroll view. You also saw how it had some problems and I debugged it. And I will put the code for this up on Moodle so you can have a look at it. Thanks for watching.